Wonderful to be with you. It's the end of the week, and Pete reminds me that it's almost the middle of the month.
Almost.
Year's gone. Flick, gone. Welcome to the Court of Public Opinion in the garage. I'm Jeremy Cordeaux. Peter Clayton is with me. As I say, April 14, end of the week. Before we get into before we do anything, this is takes the cake. Listen to this, will you? The US wants to elevate China to developed country status. Beijing is furious. Don't you love it? There's self-interest, you know. If there's a horse racing at Randwick in Sydney, or wherever they race in Flemington in Melbourne, or wherever, Moonee Valley or whatever, if there's a horse racing called self-interest, back it, because it will always win. The US bid to deprive China of its developing country designation has very much to do with the trade war currently underway between the two countries. It says here, the US House of Representatives has voted to strip China of its status as a developing country. China has condemned the move and refuses to join the ranks of developed or wealthy nations. At stake are critical economic and geopolitical issues for the world's second largest economy. I think they've got the world's biggest standing army. They have the world's second largest navy. The US House of Representatives was unanimous. The Chinese response was unanimously furious. Ironically, it was a bid by the US lawmakers to raise China's status on the official development scale that has enraged Beijing. China has been declaring itself a major global power and adopting great power diplomacy. You can say that again. Great saber rattling as well over the past few years. But that's on the geopolitical scale. When it comes to dollars and cents, the world's second largest economy prefers to pitch its tent and throw its weight at the back of the development room. Well, I hope that I hope that gets short shrift. China is a developing nation. And this, of course, all goes back to the Lima Declaration, where Whitlam signed over, and all of the Western countries favoured the developing countries, divested themselves of their manufacturing jobs and industry and enterprise in favour of giving help to third world struggling countries. Pull them out of poverty, they all said. If you've been to China, you've been to a very rich country. April 14th. This was the day in 1912, RMS Titanic, the world's largest ocean liner, hits an iceberg. I remember the other day telling you when she set sail on the maiden voyage. It was 11:40 p.m. off Newfoundland, sinks in the early hours of the 15th of April. Earlier, the unsinkable Titanic. 1894, the first public showing of Thomas Edison's kinescope. Moving pictures. Wow, they've come a long way, haven't they? 1914, US head of Firestone Tyres Rubber Company. He patents the non-skid pattern, the tread, on the inflatable tyre. They were a smart outfit. Stacy G. Clarknuff was his name, 1914. John Gielgud, later Sir John Gielgud, British stage and screen actor, director. Arthur, Hamlet, Ages of Man, born in London, 1904. He dies in 2000. Great actor, Sir John Gielgud. 1841, the first detective story. The very first detective story is published. Edgar Allan Poe's Murders in Rue Morgue, April 1841. I must admit I haven't read it. But the first detective story, it's hard to imagine that they'd never had detective stories before. Loretta Lynn, country singer, songwriter, coal miner's daughter. She was born in Butcher's Hollow in Kentucky. Do you like Loretta Lynn, Pete?
Yeah, I do.
Yeah, she died in 2022. She was born in 1932. 1896 on this day, US Patent Office issues the patent number 558393 to one Dr. John Harvey Kellogg of Battle Creek, Michigan, for flaked cereal and the process of making same. Happy birthday to cornflakes! Golly, 1896. What would people have for breakfast before that? I mean, oats, porridge. Yeah. US President Abraham Lincoln is shot in the head by John Wilkes Booth at Ford's Theatre in Washington. He dies a day later, but this was the day he was shot in 1865. I quote Abraham Lincoln a lot. Somebody did contact me and ask me if I could give details of where I get those quotes from. I will do that. I'll do it on Monday. But there are a couple of books. There's one called Talk Back Trash and Treasure that was put together by Stephanie Marsden. If you get a copy of that, it's a great book, and she quotes an awful lot of Abraham Lincoln in there. And there was another thing called, oh golly, if I've got it. I thought to myself, if I retired, when I retire, I'll go through all my books and I'll work up an index, and I'll be able to put my hand on any book that I want at a moment's notice. But there is a book, I think it was Jacob Broad. He was an old-time circuit court judge in America, and he wrote a wonderful, wonderful book. If only I could find it. It was called Quips, Quotes and Anecdotes. And it had a quip or a quote or an anecdote for any occasion, any situation. It's a wonderful resource to have. I'll try and find that over the weekend. Where was I? US President Richard Nixon ends the blockade against the People's Republic of China. That was back in 1971, about the time Richard Nixon went off to China and Whitlam went off to China. The great thawing of all of that. The first American dictionary, Noah Webster, registers the copyright for the publication on this day in 1828. The first Volvo car. I have one down there. It's a P1800S. Lovely car. The Saint. They used to use it in the TV show The Saint. Very pretty car. I love the look of the Volvo, most of them. Not so much the boxy ones. They did go through that awful stage where they had I think a 12-year-old in the design department. The car should be feminine and attractive and beautiful. The first Volvo car premieres 1927. Rod Steiger on this day, American actor. He died 2002, but born in 1925. And a severe hailstorm strikes Sydney, causing $1.7 billion. Can that be right? $1.7 billion in damages. 1999 was the year. Most costly natural disaster in Australia's history. Golly, I didn't know that. It's an interesting one. Julie Christie, the British actress, she was born in India, 1941. And US President Biden says it's time to end America's longest war, confirming his decision to withdraw all US troops from Afghanistan by September 11. That was said by the then president in 2021 on this day. He's announced, by the way, in an oblique kind of way, not official, but he has said that he, while not officially announcing he will contest the next presidential election next year, that he's going to do it, but it's not announced officially. But also, you've got to understand that Bobby Kennedy Jr. is going to run, also a Democrat. Be interesting to see. This is also very interesting. Rail authorities in various states of Australia are going to deploy drones in an attempt to catch graffiti vandals, although the story I saw described them as graffiti artists. There's nothing artistic about the rubbish that these people stick on public spaces. Look, I agree. Do anything to try and stamp out graffiti, at least control it, because it's well and truly out of control at the moment. I think the simplest thing is to, well, pass a simple law. Just a simple law. Destroying or vandalizing public property is punishable by a mandatory 10-year jail sentence. Put a few people away. Look like you're serious. And you'll probably make a lot more progress than has been made up until now. If you go to other parts of the world, you will not see graffiti. You go to Singapore, oh, they'll tell you it's a police state. No, it's an ordered, sensible, sane city-state. But you graffiti something. Cameras are everywhere. In fact, it's a good point. With cameras being so prolific, endemic, well, I can't imagine why we can't. But I suppose if you've got somebody in the dead of night with a hoodie on, you're not going to be able to track him down, are you? No, just make sure that there is the threat of the full force of the law hanging over the heads of people who would destroy or damage public property. I mentioned Tupperware shares, didn't I? The end of a 77-year-old company. Young people apparently don't want to go to Tupperware parties. They probably don't know what a Tupperware party is. I can't imagine the generations are so different that what appealed to people 50 years ago doesn't appeal to people today. Yes, you have to update it, you have to repackage it, but human nature is human nature. I understand the demands upon the public purse. Apparently we have to spend, we are told, billions of dollars on the preservation or the restoration of public buildings. Now, these are museums and art galleries, all sorts of public buildings, even the War Memorial in Canberra. Well, they're 50 years old or less. Amazing when you think that they weren't better built back in those days. You go back and you look at some of the buildings that were built centuries ago, and they still stand today. Anyway, they want billions to restore the public buildings, billions for Medicare, they want billions for the NDIS, billions for defence, billions for welfare. Really is a joke. There's no way a small workforce, such as the one we have in Australia, with the taxation system that we have in Australia. We're 25 million people, and I'm not really sure how many people are actually paying tax. Anyway, we're supposed to do all of this and more. And then I see demonstrating in the streets of Adelaide. It was at the Santos, you know, the gas producer, Santos, their AGM here in Adelaide. There were all these people demonstrating. I don't didn't look like they had a job, because how did they get out of work to go and demonstrate? But anyway, they were demonstrating against Santos for daring to create the wealth that these people want to spend. I wonder where they think it comes from. We need the explorers. We need the risk takers, the producers of wealth and jobs. All of these lefties, what they want to do is spend the wealth, allocate the wealth. They've got no idea probably where it comes from and who generates it. Please, can't we get some kind of perspective going here? Start respecting the people who produce the wealth. All right, they're not perfect. I don't pretend they are. But they are the engine room that we need if we're going to keep this show on the road. They produce the wealth that we all increasingly need and increasingly depend upon. Can we kind of get that straight? And on the subject of the Santos AGM last week, all these people from the Tiwi Islands, who told them about the AGM? Who organised and paid for their trip down south? A pretty big expense, I would have thought. And it is good to remember that these people have their hands, along with many, many others, of course, deep in the pockets of Australia. Deep, I mean really deep. How do they imagine their welfare and benefits are paid if not from the wealth of the Commonwealth of Australia? Any fair-minded Australian would, or should, tell these people to pull their heads in. Be grateful. You cannot expect the largesse of this country while objecting to the effort and energy and enterprise that generates it. It really is that simple. Unless you fancy, of course, that you can just keep the printing presses rolling. Oh, that was done back in Whitlam's day. Big time. Oh, and speaking of money, don't you love it? The head of the Reserve Bank, Philip Lowe, at one of his regular press club luncheon things, last week it was, he was being pushed to predict when the interest rates would be cut. You know, they're kind of going up. But he was pushed to predict when the Reserve Bank would cut the interest rates. These are the same people who have been hounding and condemning him because he had the temerity to predict when the interest rates might go up. Again, the word hypocrite comes to mind. Colin says, and I'll have to take this on notice, I meant to look it up and try and find the answer, but Colin says, can you tell me what happened to the Queen's corgis? No, I can't, but there's no way in the world that the Queen would not have allowed a generous future for the corgis. I know that the King is surrounded by Jack Russells, but not corgis. Anyway, I'll find out for you. I'll find out and let you know. Oh, and Helen says, Jeremy, you need a haircut. Yes. No, it's true. No, it's true. I do. But I want to keep us far away from that modern thing, you know, with the... It's not short back and sides, it's really the Hitler haircut. Shaved sides and back. It's the Hitler look. I want to keep as far away from that as I possibly can. But it's amazing the people who seem to want to embrace it. Thank you very much for viewing the Court of Public Opinion. Plenty to talk about next week, ladies and gentlemen. Believe in yourself. Thank you for viewing the Court of Public Opinion. I'm Jeremy Cordo. Peter Clayton and I'll be back Monday. Believe in yourself and goodbye for now.